How many times have we tried something once and decided quietly inside ourselves that trying again was no longer worth it? Not because we truly believed we couldn't, but because that one moment of rejection felt so loud that we let it speak for the rest of our lives. We stopped applying. We stopped reaching. We stopped believing that the door would ever open for us. Because one door closed hard in our face. This is the story of two people who stood at the same closed door, felt the same pain, heard the same no, and made two completely different decisions. Stay with me until the end, because this story does not just show you what happens when you quit. It shows you what was waiting, just one step past the moment you almost stopped. Once upon a time, in a small village called Greystone, nestled between rolling green hills and a river that ran silver in the morning light, there lived two young men who had grown up side by side. Their names were Calvin and Seth. Same street, same school, same dreams. Both of them wanted to become craftsmen, to build furniture with their hands and sell their work at the market. In the town across the valley, they had the same talent, the same hunger, the same starting point, and on the same cold morning in March, they both walked together to the workshop of the most respected craftsman in the entire valley, a man named Master Aldrich, to ask for an apprenticeship. Master Aldrich looked at their work samples, turned them over slowly, said nothing for a long time. Then he set them down and said without apology, "These are not ready. Neither of you are ready. Come back when your work can speak for itself." He closed the door. Calvin and Seth stood outside, in the cold morning air. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Calvin stared at the closed door. Inside his chest, something cracked. Not loudly, but quietly, the way ice breaks, under slow, steady pressure. He thought about the months of practice, the early mornings, the sore hands. That evening, both young men sat in their homes. Seth opened his notebook, wrote down everything Master Aldrich had said, studied his rejected sample with new eyes, not the eyes of a boy who had failed, but the eyes of a craftsman who now knew exactly what needed to change. He felt the pain. He did not pretend it wasn't there, but he said to himself, "One man's no is not the final word on what I am capable of." He picked up his tools and went back to work. Calvin sat at his table, did not pick up his tools. He thought about his neighbors, how some of them had connections to other workshops, how some had family names that opened doors his name never would. "That's how it works," he told his mother that evening. "It's not about skill. It's about who you know. People like us don't get chosen." His mother looked at him quietly, said nothing, but her eyes said everything. Seth worked every day, not for applause, not for anyone watching, just him, his tools, and the gap between where he was and where he needed to be. He tried new techniques, failed at them, tried again, failed better. He visited other craftsmen in the valley, not to beg for apprenticeships, but to watch, to learn, to absorb everything his hands could not yet do. 6 months later, Seth returned to Master Aldrich's workshop, this time with 3 new pieces. Master Aldrich took longer, looking at them than he had before. His hands moved slowly, across the joints, the finish, the detail. Then he looked up. "Come back Monday," he said simply. "You start at dawn." Seth walked out of that workshop and stood in the morning light, and quietly, without any audience, allowed himself to feel what 6 months of invisible work had finally produced. Calvin heard about Seth's apprenticeship through the village. He sat with it for a long time. Then one evening he walked to Seth's house. Seth answered the door and saw immediately something had shifted in his old friend's face. Not jealousy, not bitterness, something quieter, something that looked like a man who had just realized the story he had been telling himself was the wrong story. "How did you do it?" Calvin asked. Seth stepped aside and let him in. They sat at the same table, where they had sat as boys. "I stopped listening to the no, and started listening to the gap between where I was and where I needed to be. That gap was not rejection. It was instruction. Calvin looked at him. I told myself it was impossible, he said quietly. That connections were everything. That people like us didn't get chosen. I know, Seth said. I almost told myself the same thing. That first night after Master Aldrich's door, I sat exactly where you're sitting now. I felt exactly what you felt. The difference was not that I believed more than you. The difference was I decided that one closed door was not allowed to write the rest of my story. Calvin sat with those words for a very long time. Then he stood up, went home, opened his toolbox for the first time in 6 months, and started again. The next morning, Calvin passed Elder Thomas beneath the old oak tree at the center of the village. He stopped. Elder Thomas, how do you keep going when the world tells you no? Elder Thomas looked up slowly. Tell me, Calvin, when a river meets a rock, what does it do? Calvin thought. It goes around it. Does it stop flowing? No. Elder Thomas nodded. You are the river, son. Master Aldrich's door was a rock, not a wall, not the end of the river, just something to flow around. He picked up his cup of tea. The river does not ask the rock for permission to keep moving. It simply moves. That is all you have to do. Calvin and Seth's story teaches us 3 things we must never forget. 1. Rejection is information, not a verdict. Master Aldrich did not say, you will never be good enough. He said, not yet. Most rejections in life are saying the same thing. Not never. Not you are not worthy. Just, not yet. Hear it correctly. 2. The story you tell yourself after rejection is more powerful than the rejection itself. Calvin was not defeated by Master Aldrich. He was defeated by the story he chose to tell himself that evening. People like us don't get chosen. That story, not the closed door, was what kept him stuck. Guard the stories you tell yourself. In your lowest moments, they become the walls you live inside. One bad experience is a chapter, not the book. Never let a single chapter decide how your whole story ends. 3. The gap between rejection and success is where character is built. Nobody saw Seth in those 6 months. Nobody applauded his late nights. Nobody celebrated his failed attempts. But every single one of them was building the craftsman that Master Aldrich said yes to. Your invisible seasons matter. Do not abandon them. Think about your own life right now. Is there a door that closed on you that you decided meant all doors were closed? A rejection that became a belief? An experience that became an excuse? What if that door was never the last one? What if it was simply the one that sent you to the workshop where the real work needed to happen? You are not finished. You are not disqualified. You are not someone that the world has decided against. You are simply someone who has not yet shown the world what 6 months of quiet, invisible, daily work can produce. Start today. Now I want to hear from you. Has there ever been a rejection that almost made you quit, but you kept going anyway? Or one that stopped you, and you are only now realizing it didn't have to? Tell me in the comments. Your story might be the river someone else needs to keep flowing. If Calvin and Seth's story moved you, please like and share this video. Someone in your life is sitting at a closed door right now, deciding whether to stay or go. Share this with them. Subscribe to Story by Aribs for stories that don't just inspire you. They find you exactly where you stopped and remind you, you are allowed to start again. Until next time, keep flowing, keep building, and keep moving forward in life.